Hey guys, welcome back to the Radium Records channel. I'm Bradley Denniston, and in this video, we're gonna dive into all things soft clipping, saturation, distortion, harmonics, and I'm gonna be using the brand new Zebra clipper from Safari Pedals to achieve some really cool saturation and soft clipping. It's gonna be a lot of fun and hopefully up your mix game like crazy. So let's dive right in. First off, I want to run through the features and the UI of the Zebra clipper. The input is going to be the input drive to start to clip. You have an input and an output meter, and that's going to come in really handy as we go through this video. I'll kind of explain how this works. And then you have the output knob, of course. You also have auto gain and a bypass right here. So you can click any of these and auto gain or bypass at any time. The next feature of this plugin, which is really paramount to understanding what's going on, is this style here where we have analog, modern, or round style clipping. We have the Mojo knob where you can turn this on and off with clicking the button here and turning on this light, and you could drive this up or down. So you got 100% to 0%. And I'm going to show you exactly what the Mojo does. We're going to visualize it as well with an EQ visualizer that will show us kind of the harmonic structure and everything. And lastly, the sub boost, which is a really cool feature. This is going to give you a nice big fat low end, depending on what style you're in, will depend on what that curve looks like on that low end sub boost. Then we have the blend knob, which is an amazing feature on any plugin, and this just allows us to go parallel with it from 0% all the way to 100%. Then you can see at the top we have a menu which gives us all these different presets to start with, and these are probably built from the guys and girls over at Safari Pedals and other producers. So you can flip through these pretty easily and just check them out and see what's going on with the settings to kind of learn the plugin a little bit better. Now, before I dive into a bunch of really great techniques to help you guys up your mix and production with soft clipping and saturation on drums, bass, vocals, even the mix bus, I want to show you what this is visually so you can understand exactly what's going on with the plugin and how it's adding harmonics. What I have here is a signal generator of noise going through the Zebra clipper, and then here we have an analyzer showing us exactly what's going on with that noise when we initiate the plugin. So if I turn it on now, bam, we can see that there's harmonic distortion and there's also kind of an EQ curve that's happening. And that's going to depend on the analog, modern, or round style. So let's flip through these styles and pay attention to what happens with this curve. So this is the analog style. And if you want to exaggerate what this looks like, just push into the input, which would give you more clipping. And as you can see, the distortion kind of goes up as well. Here's modern style, and you can see that the harmonics on it are much softer and much more nuanced. And the curve got a lot flatter. Let's push into the input a little bit more. So it looks like the distortion and the harmonics are happening a lot on the top end here. Now here's the round style, and this gives us kind of a low end that is a little bit fatter, it looks like. So analog, modern, and round. Now let's back off the input just a little bit, and I'm going to go back to analog. And now let's turn on the Mojo setting and see what that does. As we bring up the Mojo, you can see that the harmonic structure starts to get exaggerated. So bypassing the Mojo, and you can see just it's adding level and gain, but it's also adding more harmonics and distortion. And that's pretty obvious by the line there. Now let's go to modern with the Mojo on. Whoa, the top end and the bottom end gets kind of this smiley face curve going, which is really cool. And then the round finally, and we'll turn the Mojo down and all the way up. And again, you can see the different EQ curves and also how the Mojo is affecting these different curves with the distortion algorithms. And this is looking really cool, this analog for the mid-range. It's really pushing the mid-range more. The modern is pushing the bottom and the top more. And then the round, you could see kind of pushes up to the top and down to the bottom as well. And then we get this kind of dip in the high mids, which is kind of fun. Now, finally, let's just visualize the sub boost. So here's analog with the sub boost. Ooh, that's nice. It's almost like a Pultec EQ style where we're getting a dip in the low mids, but we're getting a really nice boost in the low subs. There's modern. That looks really clean and nice. Just really subtle distortion on the top. And then finally round. And you can just see how these different curves are happening and what's going on with the distortion in the sub boost. Now, of course, you can get crazy with this and then you can blend it back. And this could be a really nice parallel process to blend in some nice harmonics and sub information. So just pay attention to what's going on here. Now let's hear the song. It's called In the Mood. It's one of my songs, and it's a remix version by Will. first thing I want to mess with is the kick drum, obviously, because this is kind of a house track. And let's get this kick drum feeling more fat and more full and kind of pillowy. And then I also want a little distortion on it so that it'll cut through on anything. It'll cut through on a phone speaker, on a laptop speaker, on ear pods, anywhere and everywhere. So beautiful. That's a really, really musical kind of soft clipping saturation that I think will work really well with any kick drum to just help it cut through a mix and also feel a little bit more analog. Now let's mess around with Zebra Clip on this percussion loop. That just feels way cooler to me. It feels like it gets warmer and it also pops out of the mix more. So we're giving some perceived loudness with the harmonics, and that's something you really want to use soft clipping and saturation for, is that perceived loudness. Because if you have the fundamental, let's say it's just a 1K, boo, and then you add harmonics to that fundamental, you start to hear it better and fuller and richer. You're hearing not just boo, a sine wave, now you're hearing boo, and it starts to get fuzzy and big and really warm and feel less digital and sterile from like a DAW, because that's really what we're fighting against when we have DAWs, is this digital audio that sounds really electronic and sharp. Now I really want to mess around with this synth part, this lead synth here that's coming in. And this is really where I get this blend knob to work for me. I can get that distortion and I can hear it really well if I'm 100% and I start to drive it, and then I'll back off by just blending it down. So check this out. Really just like a musical sounding thing. It pushes things forward a lot of the times as well if you get into distortion on the top end. And remember, we checked out the visualizer for the modern setting and style, and what it does is it really focuses on the high end for the distortion and the bottom, and it does a smiley face kind of curve. So we have to be really careful with bringing the top distortion up, because it can really just push something forward in the mix. So you really got to kind of use your ear here. I might go with the round setting more, or the analog setting, and then just blend it back. So that's something you really want to pay attention to with saturation, soft clipping, is the fact that you are adding harmonic information, which is going to make the ear hear it better. So you got to mess around with volume and blending parallel with that saturation. Now let's talk about saturation and soft clipping on the vocals. Now the vocals obviously are a very mid-range forward thing, unless you have a really low voice or a really high wispy voice. But for the most part, male vocals, even female vocals, are really focused on the mid-range, meaning they're very focused in on the 500 to about 3K area. So that's really what we're gonna do here with Zebra Clip, is we're just gonna add some of that distortion and help these vocals cut through the mix a little bit better. So I'm gonna bypass this and we're gonna pop it in and out on these vocals so I can show you what they're doing in the mix.
Talk when your mood's right. Sunset with your lights down. On and on you go about all those city nights out. And even though I didn't say all the things that came to my mind when I first met you, I just wanna know you feel the same before I pour out my heart. Change the mood. Call me.
So as you can hear with the vocals, we're using the modern setting because it gives that top kind of harmonic distortion on the top end where it really helps the vocal kind of pop forward and come alive. And that's something I love about soft clipping and saturation on vocals specifically, because you can do this instead of just boosting an EQ that sounds really sterile on the top end. So we're getting harmonics, which are gonna play with that ear, especially if you're doing it to something that's already printed with reverb. It really makes the reverbs more lush. It makes the depth happen in the reverbs and the width happen as well. And I'm just gonna bypass this in and out and just pay attention to what happens with the depth and how you can hear the reverbs a lot better as well.
You call me up to talk when your mood's right. Sunset with your lights down. On and on you go about all those city nights out. And even though I didn't say all the things.
So we're getting this really nice top airy high end on the vocal and on that reverb because of the distortion and the harmonics that are happening there that are saturating that top end. So that's just a really cool way to EQ vocals, and in the mix it just makes them sound a little bit more airy, a little bit brighter, and just stand out a little bit better in the mix. So let's A/B it in the mix.
Talk when your mood's right. Sunset with your lights down. Talk when your mood's right. Sunset with your lights down.
Obviously in production and mixing, you don't want everything distorting and having that crunch to it if you're making a really, really clean sounding track. But when you are doing a stylized track, like a vintage feel, throwback feel, you want layers and textures in there and timbres. I really do like that crunch, and I think it sounds really modern, that soft clipping, that saturation, and it'll just make things feel a little bit more glued together as well. So I tend to like that kind of crunchy sound. When you do want to clean something up, just blend it back, really use your ears, make sure you're not adding too much of it to where it's stacking on top of itself, and then all of a sudden your whole track is going that can be kind of annoying to the listener, but it's all about what style you're producing. And the final thing I want to do with this Zebra clipper is throw it on the master bus. Something I want to point out, when you're using a soft clipper or a hard clipper especially, you usually want to put it the second to last plugin. Your last plugin being your final limiting, where you're setting a brick wall limit. You can use a hard clipper right after a limiter, but I really don't recommend it unless you're trying to go for really, really, really loud music or mastering. But for the most part, I like to put my soft saturation, my soft clipping right before the final limiter. The reason is because you're going to get the whole EQ and compression and everything that's happening on your master bus. That's going to glue everything and set up your kind of final tone. And then the soft clipping right before the limiter is going to give you a little bit more gas and a little bit more push on the harmonics of everything that you've already set up. It's not going to be affecting too much after you've already kind of processed everything and glued it all together. And then it's feeding your final limiter something that's going to help the song have more perceived loudness. So let's start to tweak this and be really subtle with it, because this is the master bus here.
Talk when your mood's right. Sunset with your lights down. On and on you go about all those city nights out. And even though I didn't say all the things that came to my mind when I first met you, I just wanna know you feel the same before I pour out my heart. Change the mood. Call me up to talk all loveless thoughts. I keep.
Now what this is doing for me on the master bus is it's just giving it a little bit more of a push. It's like everything's getting distorted a little bit. If everything's getting distorted just a little bit, it's going to sort of add harmonics to the whole thing, which when you have a master bus, you're adding everything. So you have a complex waveform from all the way down to 20 hertz, all the way up to 20K, right? So you're hitting it with all this huge complex waveform that's doing a bunch of different stuff. So you got to be really subtle with it. And you also got to play the different parts of the song to make sure that those quiet parts aren't getting too loud and that the loud parts aren't starting to clip and overdrive. So that's what I got for you guys in this video, using the Zebra Clipper for soft clipping and saturation in your mix and productions. I hope you guys really liked this video. If you did, show some love in the comments, and I'll leave a link to this plugin in the description so you guys can pick it up. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.